Hi there, my name is Ewan Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Remembering Love. The subject of today's video is how do you find a great or an amazing therapist? And I'm going to share with you the kind of good, the bad, and the downright bizarre or what the fuck, you know? And I'm going to share all of that with you today, really in the effort or the hope that if you're on that journey of where you feel like you can't find a good therapist or you're about to start looking for a therapist or you want to change a therapist, maybe I can share with you some of the things I've learned along this process. So for me, I started therapy around about 10 years ago, maybe 35, 36, maybe 11 years ago. And my first experience with a counselor, I look back and think there are a lot of red flags that I should have seen that this was a bad fit or a bad situation. And let me share with you kind of exactly what made it bad. And I'm sure by the end of this little story, you'll understand why. Now, I just started going to kind of AA. Although I wasn't kind of convinced how much of a problem I had, I thought I had enough of a problem that maybe I need to stop and I need kind of help. And at one of these AA meetings, I think I said something along the lines of, I'm going to look for a counsellor, And at the end of the meeting, this woman approached me with a business card saying, I'm a counsellor and you should come see me. So that was probably a red flag, in the sense of, canvassing for business at the end of a meeting. I don't know whether there's a rule against that or that's considered unethical, but she made a beeline. I wasn't friends with her, I didn't even know her. She just came across and said, you should come see me. So, okay, why not? I'd never had counselling before or anything like that whatsoever. So I turn up to her house, it's at her house. And I have a little bit of anxiety about being early. I like to be early, I never like to be late. So I turned up it was like 12 o'clock, I turned up at 11:55. And then she comes out of the house and she sees me standing there. I'm only 5 minutes early, I'm not like 30 minutes. And she's like, what are you doing here? You're 5 minutes early. And I say, I just prefer to get here a little bit earlier. So she's kind of abrasive and a bit weird with me. And then she says, well, I need a cigarette before we start. So you need to go away and come back in 5 minutes. So I'm like, oh, okay, so it's already a little bit weird. Like, first of all, I'm going to her for sort of addiction counselling and she's smoking a Dory, a cigarette before we start. Like, okay, well, I'll just let that go. It's no big deal. So, I go into her house, I come back in 5 minutes, I go in. And the first thing is the setting is just her lounge room and she hasn't moved chairs anywhere or there isn't a special office. It's just her lounge room. I'm on a lounge suite and she's on another chair. So I was almost half expecting her to start eating some cornflakes or read the paper or put the kettle on. So it was a little bit informal. So that again created a bit of, okay, this is a little weird. And then she said, look, before we start, we need to be very clear about something. When you come here, it's not my job to provide you with water. You need to bring your own water. This isn't like a water service. And I was just looking at her like, what? Like, really? Like, you really think that was the biggest thing on my mind? That like, when I get there better be refreshments. That if I'm going to see a counsellor, she better supply water because, it's a really important part of getting therapy. It was just a really odd thing to start the session with. And it was just a really odd tone. It was almost accusatory and she's setting this kind of boundary as if I was trying to cross it about water. And it just started the whole relationship therapeutically off on the wrong foot. So you had these 4 red flags straight off the bat. But I continued. I thought, well, what do I know kind of thing, and I'll just push these kind of feelings aside and get on with it. And then it continued for a few weeks. I think maybe about 6 weeks or so. I saw her every week. And then she started asking me about my girlfriend, Susanna, who's my current wife now, and she started bringing this thing, she needs to come and she's obviously got issues too and I need to speak to her. And I was kind of reluctant a little bit, like, well, I'd only been with Susanna for a year. I'm like, I don't know what she's got to do with this. And she's like, you need couple counselling and she needs her own. She never even met her, and she's decided that she's obviously really dysfunctional as well and I need to speak to her. So I said, okay, well, I'll talk to her about it. And I think she went along just because, maybe she thought it would help me or understand or something. And this woman basically proceeded to tell her that I was really dysfunctional and that I was kind of beyond help and that if she didn't break up with me, she'd basically be enabling me. It was like horrible and it was weird and just odd. And then I called her like, why have you said this to Susanna? Like, what are you doing? And she wouldn't answer my calls. And then she was calling Susanna, wanting to know if Susanna wanted to go on a date with her. It was the oddest thing, most unethical, weirdest thing ever. And this is my first sort of counselling experience. And Susanna's just like, she is crazy. She is cray-cray. She is like, you've got issues, but she really has issues. At that point, I mean, I was just looking for answers, like, why are you doing this? But I stopped calling her, and that relationship had ended. So that was an odd, strange, what the F kind of experience. But I thought, okay, that's probably an anomaly. That's kind of, how many weird people are there in psychotherapy? Probably a lot, but maybe I was just a little bit unlucky. So the next person I went to, maybe 6 months I left, I thought, like, I still need help, in inverted commas. So I looked up someone in a directory of psychologists, someone established, someone sort of real, inverted commas. And I went to see this guy, and he was okay. He was, I think, probably in his mid-50s. He'd been a psychologist for like 30 years. And yeah, he was okay, but there was just no connection or no rapport. And I felt a little bit like he was the psychiatrist or psychologist in Something to Do About Mary, where Ben Stiller's kind of like pouring his life story out and the psychologist is off getting lunch pretending he's there. Yes, I had that kind of like he's phoning it in a little bit. And then he did the same thing, that this previous one did, is I need to see your girlfriend and she obviously needs help. And there's just this assumption that if you're this dysfunctional, then whoever you're with must be codependent or, just as equally dysfunctional, and she needs therapy as well. And the same thing, you need couples therapy. And I was just like, no, I don't really, I'm here to deal with my own issues. I don't want to bring Susanna into it. But he just kept insisting. He just kept pushing. He spoke to her, when is she coming in? And he just overdid it. And to the point where I was just like, okay, I'm not coming back. Like, this isn't, I don't know where you're going with this. So that ended. And then, maybe 6 months later again, I thought, I got to keep, I'm bound to find someone good at some point. And then I started seeing a Gestalt therapist, this guy in his 60s, amazing guy, and we were doing really good work. I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting and innovative. And we'd do the empty chair stuff and the whole how thing, and I really liked it. And then he left the island. I was on Malta at the time. So that relationship came to an end more just from circumstance. He left. And then I saw a woman briefly, but then something happened where she started studying and then she stopped, so then that stopped, but didn't really start much. And then finally I was involved in an outreach program or an outpatients program for addiction that was provided by the government, and as part of that they had a counsellor and a therapist who were part of that program that I got to start seeing, and they were really good. They were really caring, they were really concerned, they were really helpful. They were part of this team. I really liked them. And then I left Malta, so that relationship came to an end more because I was leaving, but they were very sweet and very good at what they did, and I really felt if I'd stayed there I probably would have continued in that relationship. My only issue with them a little bit, they were in their late 20s, and as sincere as they were, I felt a little bit like I'm in my early 40s, and there's some things, until you're a little bit older you have to experience. So I thought, well, next time I'd probably prefer someone a little bit older than me, rather than someone younger or maybe even the same age, just because I felt like that was lacking a little bit. But if I'd stayed, I think the sincerity and care, I think, was enough that I probably would have looked aside to that, because I felt like that finding people who really care and really have a vocation is the thing that you're really looking for. So I came to Spain. I thought, okay, this time I'm not going to see someone in person. I'm going to try to see someone online or over Skype, and that way if I move it, they move it. It doesn't have this disruption anymore. So I searched the criteria of what I was looking for, the kind of speciality of what I wanted, and I came across this therapist, and that was, I think, 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And yeah, I've found an amazing therapist. And how would I define an amazing therapist or a really good therapist? It would be someone that has a good combination of care, authenticity, and compassion mixed with skill. That they're skilled in their profession as a therapist. And I think the weight still probably would be in favor of care and connection, but I think when it's coupled with skill, then you really have that kind of winning combination, or that great combination. And the care and concern thing, it just takes time, to over a period of years to really work with someone and get to know someone and to feel their genuineness takes time to kind of reveal itself. And if you give that time, then in my experience, I found like it was worthwhile. And I think that second psychologist that I saw, that lack of presence, that feeling that, I don't know, maybe someone's been doing this 20 years and they've kind of checked out a little bit and they're just phoning it in. And look, if you're a bookkeeper, an accountant, maybe you can do that. Maybe you've done this so many times, you don't make any mistakes, and a lot of heart isn't necessary. But when you're in a profession that's about building trust, connection and intimacy with your clients, like you just can't afford to get to that place. Like that, the very function of your service is that attentiveness and that attunement and that connection and that feeling of really genuinely caring for someone. And you know it generally. Like most of us know it when we feel sincerity. Maybe we don't have a lot of trust in it, maybe we've got to learn to trust it, but I think most of us have a visceral, intuitive sense of what it is to feel someone genuinely cares about it. And if what you have accompanied with that care is skill, because to be a therapist is a skill, like actively listening to someone takes skill. It takes an ability to retrain how most of us engage in a way that is skillful, and the ability to show care and warmth and empathy, but not too friendly to the point where it's like you're then chummy with your therapist, but not so cold it's like it's a therapeutic robot that you're just exchanging data with. It's just this very nice balance where there's warmth and care, but it's still contained within the framework of something that's professional with clear and set boundaries, and that's a skill. And I also feel my therapist is someone who's very up to date. He reads, he finds out the latest things. I mean, it's someone who has a vocation, who is doing this because his heart's really in it. So I imagine there's probably some therapists maybe haven't read a new book in 10 years, you know, and it's one of these fields that's constantly changing and it's updating and there's new things, and it's quite an exciting field. So you want a therapist that is into that is invested in those kind of things and has those kind of interests and brings that to the session with you, that they read this article or they've discovered this thing and they tried it out, it really worked. You know, that's the kind of enthusiasm that you want with your therapist. Now, how did I find him? Not, you know, technically where did I look on Google, but where was there a relationship between my readiness and, you know, when the student's ready, the teacher comes along kind of thing, or is it just luck? You know, I just happened to find the right person at the right time by chance. And I don't know. You know, I think it's a combination of persistence and a little bit of fate, maybe a little bit of luck. I mean, I persisted. I really did. As you saw, I went through a series of people before I found this therapist, and I did persist, and I felt like it did pay off. So, look, I hope this has helped. And my biggest advice is follow your intuition. You know, if you feel like something's not working and not right with someone, you don't need to justify it. You don't need to overanalyze it. Even if you say, well, if I'm just using that as an excuse to justify running away, well, you know, so be it. You know, maybe you're just not ready, and that's okay too. You know, but I think the big thing is to trust your own knowing, is to feel like, do I feel good about this relationship? Do I feel empowered by this relationship? Do I feel safe in this relationship? And if you don't, then you know, you don't need to justify it. Just trust that and keep working to find someone who you do, because they're out there. There's, you know, I definitely think there's more better ones than there are worse ones, but you know, sometimes you do got to kiss a few frogs to get to your therapeutic prince or princess. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please take care of yourself. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and take care. Bye bye.